It appears as though Bryan Reynolds isn't untouchable after all. The Pittsburgh Pirates star has a 50-50 chance to get traded this winter, according to John Morosi. The Toronto Blue Jays are rumored to be one of the four teams in the mix. Should they go all in for Reynolds? We'll break that down on this episode of Jays Digest. What's up, Jays fans? I'm your host, Peter Vryonis, alongside host Nick Gosse. I want to thank you all for the warm wishes yesterday. Feeling okay today. It was just one of those days. So thank you all for your support. I'm glad to be back today, just in time for this episode, this big bomb that was dropped today. But first, we want to thank you all for the support that we've been getting. It's been unreal. Our original goal was 5K by Christmas time. Don't know if we're going to get there. But 5K by the new year seems pretty reasonable. So that would be great if that could happen.
Yeah, hit the subscribe button if you enjoy daily content. And yeah, Peter really appreciated those well wishes you guys there. You guys have been great. But yeah, some crazy news dropped today, and let's just get right into it. We have a massive trade update revolving around Bryan Reynolds and the Blue Jays. You know, it was kind of quieted down after, the Pirates came out and said that they want to keep Bryan Reynolds. But like we said when that originally happened, things can change and things have changed. I'll pop up. We have a lot of screenshots today. We'll pop up the first main thing. This was dropped around 5 hours the other day saying if the Pirates trade Bryan Reynolds this offseason, they're looking for at least one top starting pitcher to headline the package, such as Bobby Miller of the Dodgers or Ricky Tiedemann of the Blue Jays, both of whom rank among top 40 prospects. Now, we have some more updates to get into that he talked about later, but what are your thoughts on that?
Well, first off, I think I said it in the Ricky Tiedemann video. You only trade him for a superstar that puts you over the top this year. And I think Bryan Reynolds is one of those superstars one of the handful of superstars on the trade market right now that you trade Ricky Tiedemann for. And I'm still on that train. I think you make that trade because this is something that you need. And this sets the Blue Jays up not only for this year, but for the next 2-3 years, as Bryan Reynolds has 3 years of control left. So I'm making this trade from the Toronto Blue Jays. I'm not only including Ricky Tiedemann, I'm including maybe four of our top five prospects. That's how good Bryan Reynolds is. And you may not agree with me on that, but this is the type of guy that can move the needle for you. And if they do decide to trade for Bryan Reynolds, that's when you got to go all in. That's when you got to go out and get another starter, trade one of your catchers for a starting pitcher. That's when you got to go bolster your bullpen even more. If you make this move, it signifies to your team and it signifies to the fan base that you're all in.
Yeah, and it's a good point, and that's kind of what the majority of this video is going to be about, is whether we should do that. And there's lots of opinions on Twitter. Twitter is going crazy. I have a couple of trades from Jays fans and the likes out there, so we'll get into a couple of other reports first. This is what you touched on in the intro. Morrissey went on another show after and said there's a better than a 50-50 chance Reynolds will be traded this winter. Mentions Jays as one of the 3 of 4 teams who have engaged Pirates on Reynolds over recent weeks, and he thinks that Reynolds is the right fit, or right on the border of a player the Jays should trade Tiedemann for. And like you kind of mentioned, it would not be a 1-for-1 Tiedemann for Reynolds. We need to add a bit more, and I'll pop up the trade machine in a minute, but 50-50 chance. It feels like a couple weeks ago it was like a 0% chance, so now it's 50-50, and I'm kind of with you. Bryan Reynolds is phenomenal. We made a video the other day on Ricky Tiedemann. He's so good. It's going to be tough to trade him.
He is very good. He is very good, but he doesn't put you over the top right now. And your window is in the next 2 years, in the next 3 years. And I'd even go as far as saying your window is now, because George Springer is not getting any younger. He's one of your better players, so you got to try to give him as much help as you can. If you bring in a guy like Bryan Reynolds, that means he's probably going to be playing a lot of right field with Kevin Kiermaier in the lineup. That means George Springer is going to stay healthier. He's going to DH a lot more. So, like I said, there's only a handful of players that you trade a guy like Ricky Tiedemann for, but Bryan Reynolds is one of them. And it's gotta happen. It's gotta happen if you're willing to go all in right now. Do it. Go all in. Show your players that you're serious. And there's going to be other moves that follow as well. It's not that's not the only move that needs to be made.
Yeah, and I'm curious to see what the comment section thinks of this. We had a couple videos in the past, but you're making some very bold claims that I agree with for the most part. It's just so tough to trade Tiedemann, and I will agree with you around in the window. Obviously, our long-term window, our core is still young, But George Springer is one of the best players in the MLB, and he'll only be that for a couple of more years until he starts to have a slow decline. And so I don't know. Plus we have Gosman now, so the window is definitely now. And here's a
Yeah,
go ahead.
but I'll just say this, Nick, before you show that. Yeah, your core of players is young, but how confident are you that you're going to be able to re-sign Bo Bichette, Vladimir Guerrero Jr.? Although you should do whatever you can to keep those guys around, the market indicates that there's going to be a lot of suitors for those guys once they hit free agency in a couple years, and there's no guarantee that they'll be back, no matter how much money that you throw at them. So you gotta pray and hope that you can get them back. But if you can't, you got to maximize whatever time you have left with them before it's too late.
Yeah, and that's a question that they'll have to ask internally how confident they are. But this was an opinion of a guy on Twitter who's big Jays fan. He said Reynolds was a 6-win player in 2021, has 3 years of control with aligns perfectly with the current core. Why on earth would you want to wait and see what this 20-year-old kid becomes when you could land a proven star that puts your team over the edge? He also went on to say the prospect huggers are hilarious to me. I'm trading Tiedemann for Bryan Reynolds immediately. Now, this kind of defends your point completely, and I don't know. I'm kind of with you regarding trading Ricky Tiedemann. And, he mentions, and I'll pop it up here again at the end, he says Tiedemann could be great or he could be a Sean Manaea. And I don't think he's going to be Sean Manaea. I'll let you touch on that in a second. But in general, I agree with him in the sense of prospect hugging. We had Nate Pearson issue where he never really turned out to be anything. But that's not really, that's kind of an exception to the rule more so than the actual rule. You expect Tiedemann to be, a stud in this league.
Yeah, of course. And I really do think he has that type of potential, but it's all about evaluating your team where they're at right now. And Ricky Tiedemann doesn't put you over the top in 2023. As good as he is, as many tools as he has to be great in this league, he's not going to move the needle that much. But a guy like Bryan Reynolds, a guy who was a top 10 MVP candidate just a year ago and he's a 5-tool player, this is the guy that moves the needle for you. And you got to do whatever you can to go out there and get a guy like that and then make all the other moves that you need to make to build a World Series contender.
Yeah, completely agree. And I'm starting to, slowly get shifted towards, if it's for Bryan Reynolds, that might be one of the only players that is obviously available that you might want to trade Ricky Tiedemann for. I don't know. I'm curious to see what people think in the comments, and I'm just going to show one trade. And this was from a guy on Twitter, and I'm curious to see what your thoughts are on it, Peter. It's Bryan Reynolds for Danny Jansen, Mako, a recently acquired prospect in the Hernandez trade, and Ricky Tiedemann. Now, obviously, they don't need a catcher, but maybe a Danny Jansen would be a bit of a bridge, or they could flip him for another player in a 3-way trade. But they get the guy in Ricky Tiedemann, along with a stud in Mako, who was kind of a underrated piece of that Teoscar Hernandez trade.
Yeah, and like you said, the Pirates don't need a catcher right now. So I don't think they'll go for that. I really do think it's got to be all prospects and maybe like one major league ready player, like not necessarily an Espinal, but someone on that caliber to kind of just wait until all the prospects are ready to go. So I really do think you need like maybe 4 of your top 5 prospects to get this done. And at that point, you don't really care about replenishing your farm system because your window's right now. And I'm going to sound like a broken record. You do this. You do this when a player like Reynolds becomes available on the market, when he has 3 years left of control. You have time within those 3 years to replenish your farm system, but a player like Reynolds doesn't become available every year. So I don't know. I'm on the train of trading whatever it takes to get a guy like that.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm kind of on the fence. I definitely wouldn't trade 4 of our top 5 prospects. I can see the argument. I don't know. He's declined a little bit last year. His defense has slowly been declining, so I don't know. It's a bit Tiedemann I can get behind, but I don't know about dumping the whole farm system for him. But there's definitely an argument to be made, and I don't know. It's very difficult to say because obviously I'll let you. Do you have any other things to say? I don't know. I'm just a bit worried that his production might start to decline, especially after his down year last year.
I don't think he'll decline. He's 20. He's going to be 28 by opening day, and I really think his numbers declining was just a question of him being fed up in Pittsburgh. The guy is just too good to be on that organization that has no intentions of winning anytime soon, that has no intentions of spending any money. These professional athletes, especially in Major League Baseball, you got to be around a team for 162 games, a team that has no aspirations to be any good and waste your prime. Of course you're going to be demotivated and not want to give it your all. Like, if you look at just his StatCast, for example, His StatCast in 2021, he had 98 percentile outs above average. Then the next year, he goes to a sixth
60s,
percentile
yeah.
outs above
Yeah.
average. That's an effort thing. That's not him declining as a player. That's him saying, I am fed up in this situation and I want to go to a contender and I deserve to be on a contender because I'm a top 20 player in all of Major League Baseball. And that's exactly what Bryan Reynolds was feeling in Pittsburgh. And I have no doubt that he'll perform at, if not an MVP level, an all MLB level in Toronto.
Yeah, some good points, and that's the only thing that definitely does make some sense. And I don't know. At the end of the day, I'm with you on the fact that you can only prospect hug for so long because most of them don't work out to be the stars that they are intended to be. Obviously, some of them will, but Ricky Tiedemann, I think after that video, Austin, a lot of Jays fans have started to grow a bit of an attachment towards Ricky Tiedemann over the past couple of years. But if you're getting a guy like Bryan Reynolds, I think it'd be worth it. But we'll get into the final topic of the video, just a very quick one, and it is a free agency update. So this news dropped about an hour ago, I believe, about Drew Smyly, and we've obviously been on record saying Drew Smyly would be a great fit. You as well. You said you'd rather him over Johnny Cueto, which definitely makes sense, and that is the wrong screenshot. Is this one here. Free agent pitcher Drew Smyly and the Chicago Cubs are in agreement on a 2-year, $19 million contract. So Drew Smyly's not going to be coming to the Blue Jays, but he's going to the Cubs. The Cubs, they're making some moves, and it would have been a player I would have liked to see in the Jays, though.
Yeah, I mean, he definitely fits, but like I said, that fifth rotation spot is basically Yusei Kikuchi's and Mitch White's, and then we're basically waiting until Tiedemann is coming up. But if you do go and get Bryan Reynolds, then you need to fill that fifth spot because you're not really reserving it for anyone. So I think at that point, if you do get a guy like Bryan Reynolds, you go and trade 1-year catchers to a team that needs them for a starting pitcher, like the Miami Marlins, Pablo Lopez, something like that. So there's a ton of things that that the Blue Jays can explore, whether it be on the free agency market or on the trade market. But I don't think it's the end of the world. Drew Smyly is a middle of the road type starter and doesn't necessarily put us over the top. But he's a good innings eater to have.
Yeah, it definitely doesn't move the needle, and that's a good point. If we get Bryan Reynolds, more moves will definitely come. We'll have videos coming on that. There's a few other catcher things that have dropped over the past couple of days, so expect to see that soon. And who knows, maybe Bryan Reynolds will be traded before we know it to the Blue Jays. But that'll wrap up the video. The support continues to be unbelievable. You guys have been, I don't know, I can't thank you guys enough. It's been unreal, and we'll see you guys in tomorrow's video.
Thanks.